8 years I built this business, and she dismantled it in 9 months carefully, brick by brick, while I thought we were partners. Her name was Melissa. And to this day, when I hear that name, my jaw tightens. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because in the moment when everything started, I was sitting across from Craig Donovan and smiling. Conference room on the 5th floor, coffee I wasn't drinking, our portfolio binder on the table. A standard meeting with a potential client. I'd had maybe 300 of those in 8 years. I know how to smile when I need to. That's not cynicism, that's the job. In the event business, you smile at other people's weddings when you have 102 fever. You smile when the catering is 40 minutes late and the bride is crying in the bathroom. You smile, and everything goes according to plan. Craig talked about budget, about dates, about corporate team spirit. I nodded, made notes, asked the right questions, and the whole time I was thinking about one thing only. Melissa was at the office right now. Our office on Maple Street. Drinking coffee, laughing with Jenna at reception, putting together some presentation, everything as usual, except nothing was as usual, not for a long time. I'd found out everything 40 hours ago, and since then I hadn't said a word to her. Craig reached his hand across the table. "Diana, always a pleasure." "Likewise," I said, and smiled. 40 hours ago, I was sitting at home with my laptop and a glass of wine. A regular Tuesday evening. I was going through emails, the ones I hadn't gotten to during the day. There was a message from Marcus Webb. Marcus was a corporate client, 3 years with us. Annual conference for 200 people, summer team building, holiday gala. One of those clients you could count on. In February, he'd written that they'd be going in a different direction this year. Standard language. It happens. The email was short. "Diana, wanted to confirm the details for the April event. Melissa mentioned you're handling the logistics personally." I read it twice. The April event. We'd parted ways with Marcus in February. There was no April event, at least not with us. I wrote back, asked him to clarify what he meant. He replied 20 minutes later, apologized for the confusion, wrote the name of the agency, Event Horizon LLC. "Melissa said it's your new operational structure, a separate entity for larger clients." I set my glass down on the table. Event Horizon LLC. I opened a new tab, found the registration in 4 minutes. Delaware, last September. Director Melissa Ann Hartwell. September, 9 months ago. We'd been celebrating closing the biggest contract in the agency's history that same month. I'd bought champagne. She said I was the best partner anyone could dream of. I sat and stared at the screen. The wine sat untouched. You know what's strange? For the first 10 minutes, I just looked for an explanation. A normal, logical one. Maybe she'd opened it for some separate project. Maybe I'd forgotten something. Maybe there was a reason she hadn't had time to explain yet. That's not naivety. That's 8 years of trust. The mind doesn't give up all at once. Then I opened our shared financial account and started looking at the clients we'd lost over the past 9 months. I picked up my phone at 11:47 at night, found Melissa in my contacts. Big letter M, a photo of the two of us laughing at the opening of our first real office. 3 years ago, champagne, balloons, both of us a little drunk from exhaustion and happiness. I'd set that photo myself. Never changed it. My thumb hovered over the screen, and I put the phone down on the table. Not because I was scared. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I suddenly understood very clearly, if I called now, she would start explaining. And the explanations would be good. Melissa knows how to explain. In 8 years, I'd watched her get out of situations that seemed impossible, with clients, with vendors, with people who came in with complaints and left smiling. I know her tools. I'd applauded them myself. If you've ever been in that moment when you know the truth and you're holding the phone and part of you still wants to believe there's another version of the story, then you know exactly what I mean. That part of you isn't stupid. It's just loyal. And loyalty is the thing people like Melissa count on. I couldn't afford that. I went back to the laptop. In the event business, there's a rule I learned early on. Never go into a negotiation without knowing more than the other side. It doesn't matter how much you trust your partner. Information isn't distrust. It's the job. I opened the contracts folder for the past 2 years, exported the client list into a spreadsheet, then pulled up the Event Horizon LLC website, simple, clearly built in a hurry, and started comparing. It was almost 1 in the morning. The wine was still untouched. Over the next 2 hours, I found 7 clients, 7 companies that had left us and now appeared in Event Horizon's portfolio, all large accounts, all ones Melissa had managed personally, all gone with the same language. Changing vendors, thank you for your partnership. I need to stop here for a moment, because September matters. I remember it clearly. You don't forget a month like that. On the 14th, I lost a pregnancy. 8 weeks. Garrett and I had only just started saying it out loud, carefully, like we were afraid to jinx it. We hadn't told anyone. Only Melissa knew. Because she always knew everything, I'd told her myself in July over coffee when I couldn't hold it in any longer. She'd hugged me then, said, "Diana, this is the best thing that could happen to you. You're going to be an incredible mother." In September, when it happened, she came to my house, brought food, sat with me, said she'd take care of everything, the office, clients, current projects. "Just rest, I've got it." I was so grateful. For 2 weeks, I was barely at the office. Garrett was at work. I lay at home staring at the ceiling, and the only person who called every day was Melissa, asking how I was, reporting that everything was under control, sometimes just staying on the line in silence, and that was enough. Sitting at 3 in the morning in front of the closed laptop, I counted the dates. Event Horizon LLC registered September 22nd. I took leave on the 14th. Melissa got full access to the client database on the 18th. I'd asked her myself to just keep an eye on things. 8 days. She needed 8 days. Do you know what actually breaks you? Not the fact itself. Not the numbers or the LLC registered while I was lying at home. It's that I go back to those phone calls, her voice, her "how are you today?" and I still can't figure it out. Was she pretending, or was it real? Can you genuinely care about someone and methodically steal from them at the same time? I don't know the answer. Maybe there isn't one. But I knew one thing. In the morning, I had to go into the office, see her, talk to her, drink coffee at the same table, and I couldn't afford the luxury of being broken. I got up, washed my face with cold water, looked at myself in the mirror. In the event business, there are moments when everything goes wrong. Decorations fall, the band doesn't show, the bride is hysterical. And you're the only person in the room who knows what to do next. Not because you're not scared, but because you're a professional. I'm a professional. Carolyn Reed worked on the 7th floor of an office building on Franklin Street. Glass door, minimalist reception, a secretary who looked at you like you already owed money. I'd been there once before, 4 years ago, when we filed the partnership agreement with Melissa. That same document, signed at that same table. Carolyn remembered me, shook my hand, sat me down, asked her secretary not to disturb us. She was the kind of lawyer who doesn't waste time on preamble. "Tell me what you have," I told her. Evenly, in order. Marcus's email, Event Horizon LLC, the registration date, 7 clients, September. I laid out the printouts I'd made at 6 in the morning. Carolyn read in silence. Sometimes she marked something in pencil. Her face didn't change. When I finished, she looked at the papers for another minute, then looked up. Have you checked your current operating account balance? Yes, everything looks normal. And the reserve fund? I opened my mouth. And closed it. We had a reserve account separate for emergencies. We both had access. I hadn't checked it last night. I hadn't thought about it at all. Carolyn turned her laptop toward me. I asked a colleague to look into it while you were talking. I hope you don't mind. On the screen was a statement. I saw the numbers. Then I saw the dates. 11 transactions over 8 months. Small amounts 2,000 to 6,000 each. None requiring dual authorization. All within the single signatory limit. Total $34,000. This qualifies as embezzlement, Carolyn said calmly. But that's not the main thing I'm seeing here. She picked up one of my printouts, tapped her pencil on the client names. Look at the contracts you lost, not at the departures themselves, at the termination terms. Do you remember what was written there? I remembered. Standard terms, 30 days notice, penalty for early termination if initiated by the client. We always included that. There were no penalties, I said slowly. Not in any of them. Correct, because in all 7 cases the termination was filed as a mutual agreement, signatures from both parties. Carolyn paused. Your signature is on all of them too, Diana. Silence. I didn't sign anything. I know, she said simply, but a court will look at the documents, and your signature is there. I sat there and felt something cold rising slowly from my stomach. Not panic, something worse than panic. Understanding, she wasn't just taking clients. She was building a paper trail in which I'd agreed to every departure. Voluntarily. No claims. If I'd walked into a lawyer's office a year from now, Melissa would have had 7 documents with my signature and a story about how we'd amicably divided the portfolio. She had time, Carolyn said. Not a question, a conclusion. She did this methodically, very methodically. 8 days after September 14th, when I didn't have the strength to look at my phone. There's one more thing, Carolyn continued. The office lease. Show me the contract. Carolyn leaned back in her chair. She looked at me for a long moment, the way people do when they're trying to understand not what you're saying, but what you can handle. How much does she know about what you know? Nothing. I didn't call, didn't text. For the first time all morning, Carolyn gave a small nod, like I'd given the right answer on an exam. Good. That matters. She closed the folder with my printouts. Diana, right now you have something she doesn't, time and information. Both of those disappear the moment she realizes you're digging. How much time do I have? I don't know. Could be a day, could be a week. Depends on how closely she's watching you. Carolyn picked up her pencil. Here's what we need to do before she finds out. First, freeze the reserve account. Today. I'll handle it myself. You don't need to sign anything in person. Second, notarize all the documents you've found. Third, and this is the most important, get the originals of those 7 termination agreements. Are they at the office? In the shared archive? Yes. You need to photograph them, every page, every signature before she moves them. I looked at her. You want me to go back to the office? Right now, yes, and act like everything's normal. Exactly. I was quiet for a second. And then, Carolyn put her pencil down. Then we file for embezzlement, fraud, and breach of partnership agreement. Simultaneously, a complaint about document falsification. If the signatures are actually forged, that's criminal, not civil. We also contact those 7 clients directly and explain the circumstances of their transition. Some of them may want to reconsider. She spoke evenly, methodically, like she was explaining event logistics. I suddenly understood why I felt comfortable with her. She thinks the way I do. Problem, plan, execution. No wasted emotion. One thing, Carolyn added. While you're at the office, nothing extra. No hints. No strange questions. If she senses something, it's over. Documents disappear, money moves, clients get a different version of the story. She's already shown she can work fast. 8 days, yes, she can. Can you do this? Carolyn asked. No pressure, just a question. I thought about the morning of September 14th. About Melissa sitting next to me on the couch, telling me everything would be okay. About the photo on my phone, both of us laughing, champagne, balloons. About $34,000. 11 transactions. 7 signatures I didn't write. Yes, I said. I can. Outside I stopped, took out my phone. Texted Melissa, ran late at the doctor, be in about an hour, all good, she replied within a minute, a heart emoji. No rush, everything's quiet here. I put the phone in my bag and walked to the car. I waited for Jenna to go back to her desk, went into my office, closed the door. Carolyn picked up on the second ring. There's something new, I said. She's preparing a lease termination. Someone saw the envelope last week, which means she already has a full package ready. A brief pause. Then we don't have days, we have hours. Carolyn's voice didn't change, just sharpened slightly. Here's what we do right now. You go to the archive and photograph all 7 termination agreements. Then, the original operating contracts with those clients. Then look for anything under L in her files. Lease letters, any correspondence with the landlord. I need photos before end of business. She's back at 3. What time is it now? 2:15. That's enough, go. I put my phone away and left my office. Walked past Jenna, she glanced up. I gave a small nod and went into the archive room at the end of the hall. Narrow room. Shelves floor to ceiling. 8 years of folders in chronological order. I'd built the system myself. I knew where everything was with my eyes closed. Found the first agreement in 4 minutes. Photographed every page. Then the second, third. My fingers worked quickly and steadily. On the 5th agreement, I stopped. My signature. I looked at it for a few seconds. Good work. If I hadn't known I hadn't signed it, I wouldn't have doubted it. 8 years. She'd looked at my signature for 8 years. She knew it better than I did. I photographed it and kept going. The envelope was in her bottom drawer, unlocked. Blue letters on white, large handwriting. Inside, a letter to the landlord and a draft notice of partnership termination. The date on the notice, 18 days from now. I photographed everything, put the envelope back exactly as it had been. It was 2:50 when I walked out of the archive, went back to my office, sent Carolyn 31 photographs. She replied 10 minutes later. 1 word. Enough. At 3:02, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I opened a spreadsheet with the current project and stared at the numbers. Melissa looked in the doorway. How'd the meeting go? I asked without looking up. Fine. They want to add a reception. I told them we'd discuss the budget. You okay? You look pale. Didn't sleep well, I said. I'm fine. She nodded and left. I exhaled, slowly, closed the spreadsheet. Called Carolyn that evening from my car in the parking garage under the office. What's next? I asked. Tomorrow morning, I'm filing an injunction. We freeze Event Horizon's assets and block any transactions on your shared accounts. At the same time, letters to those 7 clients with a legal summary of the circumstances of their transition. A pause. And Diana, tomorrow you need to talk to Melissa before she sees the court documents. In person, at the office. Why? Let her find out from your office. Because you've been partners for 8 years, Carolyn said simply. And because you'll want to look her in the eyes, you'll want to trust me. I sat in the dark car. Parking garage, fluorescent lights, other people walking past on their way somewhere. She was right. I would want to. Jenna had joined the agency 2 years ago. Half-page resume, no experience, but in the interview she listened so carefully that I hired her on the spot. Never regretted it. She knew how to be invisible when needed and present when needed. Remembered how everyone took their coffee. never late. Within 6 months, I couldn't remember how we'd managed without her. Melissa called her our Jenna. I'd always thought that was affection. Now I thought something different. The day went normally as a day can go when you're smiling at someone with cold emptiness inside. Melissa and I discussed 2 current projects. She mentioned something about the sound vendor and equipment issue. She'd already handled it, don't worry. I nodded, made notes. Everything as usual. At 1 o'clock, Melissa left for a meeting. Said she'd be back by 3. I waited until the elevator doors closed. Then I got up and walked out to reception. Jenna was typing something. She looked up, smiled, but about half a second later than usual. I noticed that. I pulled a chair over and sat across from her. Not at my own desk next to her. Jenna tensed slightly, just barely. "How are you?" I asked. Simply. "Good," she said, a pause. "You?" Honestly, I looked at her. "Not great." She didn't look away. That was an answer. "Jenna, I'm not going to ask you anything specific. You don't owe me anything. But if there's something you've wanted to say, now is a good time." A long pause. Jenna looked at her hands on the keyboard. "She said it was normal," she said finally, quietly, "that this happens in business, that partnerships evolve, that you both knew about it." I felt something tighten in my chest, not anger, exhaustion. When did she say that? In October. She asked me to. Jenna stopped. She asked me to redirect certain calls. If anyone called about a few specific client names, to say the project was completed and they were working with a different agency now. She said you'd agreed to divide the portfolio, that it was temporary, redirect calls. So clients had been calling, trying to reach us, and getting a scripted answer from our own receptionist. "Did you know something was wrong?" I asked. No accusation. I genuinely wanted to know. Jenna looked up. There was something like relief and shame in her expression at the same time. "I didn't know how to ask you, I thought. She's a partner." She sounded so certain. And then time kept passing and I just. "It's okay," I said. And it was. Jenna was a 24-year-old who'd been told by someone experienced that everything was fine. She'd believed it. That's how trust works. It gets used by people who know how. "Is there anything else?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then, last week she printed something large, closed the door. I didn't see what it was. But the envelope, I saw the envelope. You know how she writes, large letters, blue pen? It said lease termination. Lease termination. So she was already preparing the paperwork on the office, which meant I had less time than I'd thought. I arrived at the office at 8:15, 40 minutes earlier than usual. Jenna looked at me when I came in. I gave a barely visible shake of my head. She nodded and looked away. Smart girl. I made coffee, sat at my desk, opened my laptop, not because I was going to work, but because my hands needed something to do. Melissa came in at 9:03. I heard her voice in the hallway. She was on the phone, laughing about something, then footsteps. Then the click of heels stopped at her office. I stood up, took my coffee, knocked, "Come in." She was at her desk, sorting papers. She looked up, smiled. "Early today?" "Melissa," I said, "close the door." Something in my voice. She paused just briefly, then got up and closed the door, turned to face me. The smile was still there, but her eyes were already reading the room. I placed a printout on the table. The Event Horizon LLC registration documents. Date, September 22nd. She looked down, then at me. The smile disappeared, a long silence. "Diana, don't," I said quietly. Without anger, I surprised myself with that. "Don't start with an explanation. I saw the accounts. I saw the termination agreements. I saw the envelope in your drawer." She said nothing. For the first time in 8 years, I watched Melissa not know what to say. 18 days, I said. "That's when you were planning to do it. It's more complicated than it looks." "I know," I looked at her. You opened the LLC while I was at home after the miscarriage. You sat next to me on my couch. You brought food. You called every day. And at the same time, you were filing the paperwork. That is complicated. I'll give you that. Something moved across her face, not remorse, more like exhaustion. I'd been thinking about leaving for a long time, she said. This isn't about September. September just gave me a window. Gave you a window, I repeated. Diana, we're different people. You always wanted stability. I wanted to grow. We would have ended up here anyway. I looked at her. At the person I'd spent 8 years with, who I'd told about the pregnancy in July over coffee, who knew how I drank tea when I was sick and which flowers I hated at events. Carolyn Reed is filing today at 10, I said. An injunction. Embezzlement, fraud, document falsification. All 7 clients received letters yesterday evening. Melissa went slightly pale. That's criminal, I added. Carolyn explained the difference. Silence. Why are you telling me this? She said finally. If the documents are already filed. I picked up my coffee from the table, looked at her one last time. Because I wanted to look you in the eyes, I said, and make sure I understood everything correctly. I turned and walked out. In the hallway I stopped, just for a moment. I'd wanted to look her in the eyes and see what? Remorse. An explanation that would make it make sense. I don't know. I don't think I found it. What I found was something simpler. She was a person who made a choice, and now she'd live with it. And I was a person who made it out the other side. That was enough. 6 months later, I signed the lease on a new office. 3rd floor, north-facing windows, a view of the park. Smaller than Maple Street, by 40 square feet and $800 a month. I walked through the empty rooms with the keys in my hand and thought, this is fine. It's going to be fine here. Jenna came to help with the move. Brought coffee and boxes, arranged furniture with the energy of someone moving into her own place. Maybe that's what it felt like. She'd left Maple Street 2 days after I did. Just filed her notice and that was it. We never talked about it directly. The lawsuit closed in April. Carolyn handled it cleanly and quickly. Embezzlement proven, signature falsification proven. Event Horizon dissolved by court order. The $34,000 came back plus legal fees, plus compensation from 3 of the 7 clients who agreed to testify about how they'd been transitioned. The criminal portion, that was a separate matter, and it's Melissa's story to tell now, not mine. I didn't follow how it went. 4 of the 7 clients came back. Not right away, the first called a month after receiving Carolyn's letter. Then 2 more. Then Marcus, he called on his own, no letters, just said he wanted to continue working with us if we were still in business. We were still in business. You know what nobody tells you about being betrayed by a business partner? That afterward you build differently. Not more cautiously, that's not quite the word. More clearly. You know exactly why you're bringing someone onto the team and what you owe them and what they owe you. No blurred lines. No, we're partners, we'll figure it out. For 8 years, I built a business with someone I trusted completely. That gave me the agency, and it almost destroyed it. Now I'm building again, but on a different foundation. On the first day in the new office, Jenna put a small cactus on the reception desk. Explained very seriously. Cacti don't need constant attention and they survive well in any conditions. I looked at her. Is that a metaphor? No, she said. It's just a cactus. I laughed. For real, for the first time in a long time, it's going to be fine here.